Now my thing's on, so we have to be nice. All right, if you're watching streaming, we're here now. Sorry, 12 minutes late. It is Idaho, so there's that. We're going to start looking today at a study of the angels. Hey Gary, would you click on the presentation? I thought I did that, but apparently I didn't. So you literally just go to the presentation in PowerPoint and then just click it. Is it not? Okay. Oh. There it is. Thank you. Okay. I apologize if I assumed you didn't know how to do that. So, looking at the angels, and I don't know how long we'll be in this study because, sometimes we have good discussion and we spend a long time on one thing. But we're first of all going to look at the terms and the definitions, which are very, very important. And then we're going to look at where they're found, what they do, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll just go through with angels. We're also going to look at cherubim and seraphim and what they do, and some of the specific places, situations where we find angels specifically. So hopefully this will be fun. If it kind of ends up being a dud, then we'll go off and study something else. So we look at the terms and the definitions. The word angels is the word angelos in the Greek, and it means messenger. Simple as that. And I've often found that when you talk about angels with people, without knowing it, it is a loaded word. So think about places where, and situations where this term is used, where people use the term angel or angels, and kind of what their thought process is behind angels. Maybe you have a little child that's an angel. This is my little angel. We say those things. And to that point, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not being critical of that at all. But we use that term both with children. Maybe someone helps you and we say that was my angel. We even oftentimes use the word, that's my guardian angel, taking care of me. We use those terms. And in any number of other ways where this term is used. But then we plug it into the Bible, into Scripture, and we have to understand that it's not the same thing. It's not better or worse. It's just not the same thing. So we're going to look at the second thing is the term technically means one who is sent. The idea is a messenger, but the word technically means one who is sent. And it's also important to realize this is a transliterated word. So they didn't take the word and translate it. So whenever you go through the Old or New Testament, it doesn't say messenger. It says angel. Which again, there's not a thing wrong with that, as long as you understand that it's a transliteration as opposed to being translated. And, one of the reasons I think that this is important is, again, it's much like the word Satan or devil. Satan and devil are not proper names. It's not like God called him Satan or the devil. Those are words that have meanings themselves, either diabolical or deceiver or adversary, that kind of thing. So we almost make these terms into what am I trying to say? To where that's their name, their proper name. So a transliteration if you're wondering, is to write or print using the closest corresponding letters of a different alphabet or script. That's what transliteration is. So when you look up the word angel, the Greek is angelos. So you obviously come out with angel. And we find the same thing with Christ. The word Christ means anointed one, but they bring over Christos and they make the word Christ. Baptism is the same thing. Baptism is a transliteration. The word means immerse. So they take baptismo, or whatever that Greek word is, and they come up with baptism. Apostle is the same thing. Apostle means one who is officially sent, and you get the word apostle. And again, I want to affirm that there's nothing wrong with these things, but sometimes they can send us in the wrong direction or maybe give us the wrong idea with what's actually happening there. Imagine other people from other religious groups. What does baptism mean? Well, it's when you get saved. What does it mean? Oh, I have no idea. Because they take the word and they create an English word that didn't exist before, and so they don't know. I would imagine if you were to ask, 50 Christians, what does Christ mean? What does the word mean? And many of them may not have any idea. And the same thing with the word apostle. So looking at the word seraphim as well, and then and I'm not sure why I did this because we're going to be talking about them later. But the word seraphim, do y'all remember that in a hymnal that we sing? Cherubim and seraphim falling down before thee, who wast and are and evermore will be. In the song Holy, Holy, Holy. So that also comes from Revelation 4, where the cherubim and seraphim literally fall down before the throne and worship God. So these words mean burning ones or fiery serpent. They could mean both, depending upon the context. So I at least found this interesting. When you look at the word, how these things are kind of similar, angel in Hebrew means one who is sent. And the word prophet in Hebrew is to bubble forth. So they kind of both do the same thing, even though they have a little different meanings. And then the word prophet or the word apostle is to officially send away. So you're not just sending them out, but you're officially, with authority, sending them out like Jesus did in Matthew 10. And then the term Malachi, which is the last prophet that we have in our Bibles, means my messenger. It's the root word for angel. So the Hebrew for angel is malach. That's what it is. And so Malachi means my messenger. So that may, again, be one of those things that only in my world is that interesting, but there you go. There you have it. So we're going to look at some different verses today that talk about angels and where we find them, and just hopefully have some discussion about that and see the different things that they do. And again, remember these words, it is a messenger of the Lord. And in these places, the term there is a messenger. It's whatever God wants them to do. And one of the curious questions that comes up is, how do you know whether this angel or messenger is human or spiritual? And then, of course, that depends upon the story and the context and what's actually happening. So Genesis 16 and verse 7, I don't know, I really like this one because I know the story, but to highlight in the story what this angel actually does, I just think is very, very interesting. Looking at the story of the birth of Ishmael, and you guys remember how Ishmael comes about? Because Abram and Sarah get impatient, and so Sarah gives Hagar to Abram to have a child, and ultimately Sarah gets very, I guess you would call it, jealous. She has contempt for her in verse 4, And so she wants Abram to send Hagar away with Ishmael, his son. So looking at verse, we'll start in verse 6. Abram replied, "Look, she's your servant, so deal with her as you see fit." And then Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. And then the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness along the road to Shur. And the angel said to her, "Hagar, Sarah's servant, where have you come from and where are you going?" "Well, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah." And so the angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her authority." And then he said, "I will give you more descendants than you can count." The angel also said, "You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son." Okay, so Ishmael's not around yet. "You are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears." That's kind of cool. "For Jehovah has heard your cry of distress. This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed, and et cetera, et cetera." So what are some of the things that we learned here about at least this angel from this short story? What do we learn about angels as it regards to Hagar here?
It spoke as if it had some authority.
What's that?
It offered advice or direction.
Yeah.
As if
Yeah.
It had some level of authority.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it interesting that you have these heavenly beings that care. They care about this injustice that's being done to Hagar from Sarah. And not only do they care, but he goes and, at least as it's written in the Bible, she goes and finds her. And find her is more of a what do they call that? I don't know, onomatopoeia, but a metaphor for, of course, the angel knows where she is, but she goes to seek her and has a conversation with her and gives her some sympathy, gives her attention, all of those kind of things. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm assuming because angels, this is a messenger of the Lord. And so I'm assuming as a messenger of the Lord sent said messenger to go where Hagar is. That's what I'm assuming. So this messenger isn't doing any, it's not like it looked down and went, "Oh, Hagar, not cool," so goes down there to help. But it's sent from Jehovah to provide some compassion and some direction and some help. So that's kind of where I'm getting that from. And also, not only with the authority, but what else does the messenger know about Hagar? In verse 11, you're pregnant. So something that maybe Hagar didn't even know. You're pregnant and you will give birth to a son. Also has the information of what you're going to name him. And the name Ishmael means God hears, because the Lord has heard your cry of distress. So through this messenger, God himself is giving this information. And in some ways, and that's why I put up there before how similar messengers and prophets are. Because when you look at the idea of a prophet, and this is like number 2 thing that fascinates me, you kind of grow up thinking prophets are people that tell the future. They foretell what's going to happen. And that's not exactly accurate. They can tell about judgment that's coming, but what a prophet does is simply speak in the place of God. God gives them a message, and they tell that message. They forecast that. That's what a prophet does. And again, sometimes they are going to tell about the future, but their singular purpose is to be a mouthpiece for God. And That's what they're there for. So there's a lot of things happening here with this messenger of Jehovah, this angel of the Lord, in terms of going there to help Hagar, to comfort Hagar, to give Hagar direction, go back to Sarah and submit to her authority. And not only does this messenger know that Hagar is pregnant, but he also knows in verse 10, so you're going to have a lot of kids and grandkids and great-grandkids and et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have a lot of people in your family. So imagine here being Hagar, and we don't know, at least I can't tell if it says or not, whether this messenger is in physical form or not. Is she just sitting there and like at Jesus' baptism, the dove comes down and then this voice just hits. The same thing we find in John 16, I think. This voice just hits, and with this voice, but there's nothing physically there. There's no person. So we don't know if there's a physical person there, which we're going to see in Genesis whenever we look at Abraham and his visitors. So we don't know if there's physically a person there or not, or if she just, hears this voice. But this messenger, this angel, gives all this information to Hagar that is obviously given to her by God. So, interesting stuff from that standpoint. Not only what the angel does, but the information it gives, the discipline it gives in terms of going back to Sarah, submitting to her authority. Not only are you going to have a son, but you're going to have a lot of descendants. You're going to be a grandma and a great-grandma and all those kind of things. So a lot of information here about what angels do. And I would assume he's in a physical form. I mean, that would be very, very unusual to be sitting there and just this voice happen. But maybe that's something that they were accustomed to. I don't know. So then in Genesis chapter 22, and another reason why I think this is an interesting study is because there's a lot of stories, I think, specifically in the Old Testament that we read through, and if we're not looking for specific topics or content, I think there's a lot of things that we necessarily miss. At least I know that I do. A small example of this, and I thought this was funny. The other day, my grandson, for whatever reason, likes to, and I know this isn't unique to him, but he likes to throw eggs and crash them, whether they're regular eggs or hard-boiled, and throw them down and step on them. So the other day, he threw one out into our backyard, and it went to the other side of our little fire pit, which was a pretty decent distance for a 3.5-year-old. And so Terry asked me to go out there and get the egg because it didn't crack, and Tay wanted to throw it out again. So I go out there, and I didn't realize it, but in my head, and I don't think this is just me, I think this is how the human mind works, I was looking for a white egg, because eggs are white in my world. I say in my world because I'm sure other people are like, all my eggs are brown. I don't know what your problem is. All my eggs are white. And no, I'm not a racist. Just kidding. Totally kidding. So anyway, I go out there and I'm looking for this egg. And I keep looking back going, I can't find it. I don't see it because my brain is looking for a white egg. I can't find it. And then Terry finally says, it's one of the brown ones. And I go, oh. And I went right to it and I found it. I didn't see it because my mind was looking for a white egg. So as we go through and look at these different stories, if we're not highlighting what an angel is doing, we kind of may gloss over some stuff. So Genesis 22, in our story specifically in our topic today is in verse 11. So let's start in verse 9, because, we want to start where the paragraph starts. So when they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. And then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. And at that moment, a messenger of Jehovah, an angel of the Lord, called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Yes," Abraham said, "here I am." "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the angel said. "Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you are truly fearing God," and et cetera, et cetera. So, as opposed to Genesis 16, where does this voice come from? Yeah, this one comes from heaven. There is no, obviously, physical form of someone next to him telling him this, but this is an actual, voice from heaven, from an angel of the Lord calling to Abraham. So what do you think about that? Any thoughts about that? I mean, I know you've been studying this all week, so, I know that you have a few thoughts in your mind. Goodness, I have the same human my father-in-law does. It's kind of crazy. So how different is this scene from Genesis chapter 16 in terms of how angels, we find them operating?
It's really hard to empathize in this situation because many of us would doubt our faith to be comparable to Abram's, but be looking for any kind of reason to get out of it, and then you hear this voice.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah. Lots of hesitation. Yeah.
But if he's not been spoken to by an angel before, it's like, how do you get it? How do you understand that's an angel talking to you versus your mind saying I want out?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of tension there for sure.
Isaac's mind.
Say again?
What's going through Isaac's mind?
Oh, good question. Good question. And there's a number of scholars that believe, and I don't remember all the reasons why, that Isaac was 14, 15, 16 at this time. It's not like he was, 3 or even 8 because of what he had to carry and some of the different stuff that he did. I'm not arguing that he was. I'm saying there's some scholars that believe that. So, you've got a kid that's, I don't know, Everest's age, however old Everest is. Maybe bigger. So being tied up and, being submitted to that.
By Abraham. So his faith was probably on its way to being similar.
It's possible. It's possible. Absolutely. Yeah. So, in this moment, the difference between this, say, and Jesus' baptism. With Jesus' baptism, God himself is that voice that talks about, this is my son, I'm well pleased, listen to him, those kind of things. Here, it is an angel of the Lord. Now, I will throw this out because this is something that I think is the case, but it's not worth trying to prove it because it's just kind of, not fun, but it's interesting. That both here, it's oftentimes seen that the angel of the Lord here at Sinai, at the burning bush, and a few other places are Jesus pre-incarnate. Jesus before he put on skin. So, there's no reason to take a lot of time to try and prove that, but it's just kind of an interesting thought that Jesus before he came Christ, in that other idea, he is the angel of the Lord doing these things. And right here, at least, it would make sense because it wasn't Isaac's role to be that sacrifice. It was ultimately Jesus's, a millennia or two later. So, Genesis chapter 28, verse 10. And this is my third or maybe fifth. I think this is interesting. Both with Jacob's dream of the ladder that ascended up to heaven and his wrestling with the angel. For whatever reason, I always assume that in both of those cases that he was asleep. I don't know why I thought that, but thought he did. And that's not the case. So in Genesis 28:10, Jacob here dreams of angels ascending and descending as God's promise of what Jesus ultimately is going to do. So this is kind of a short one, but as Jacob is dreaming, these messengers are coming up and down this ladder. And in Ephesians 2, I think that's right, where Jesus says that after his resurrection, you will see the angels ascending and descending, as well as him, meaning the coming of the kingdom and etc. Okay, I think we'll stop there because we've got two more things to go through. Beginning the 24th. Beginning the 24th. So remember, this next Sunday we won't have Bible class. We're going to have the teen rally, and then we will have the potluck afterwards. And so we'll begin again here on the 24th. 24th. Yeah. So any other thoughts on this captivating topic that we are involved in? All right, let's have a prayer. God, we thank you and we praise you. Father, bless each one of our lives. Take care of us. Give us your discernment, your direction. And Father, continue to walk with us. We pray that